Chinese couples are flocking to Korea to take their wedding photos. How much do they spend in taking wedding photos in Korea, and why are they visiting Korea? President Park Geun-hye debuts on the UN stage, the flower of multilateral diplomacy. What does the latest visit to the US and Canada mean, and what does she achieve from this? Korea develops the world's first super bridge technology that increases the safety and lifespan of cable-stayed bridges. What is the core principle of this technology? From the time capsule in Seoul City Hall to TV commerce that provides TV shopping information, we will check out various services based on sonic communications technology. North Korea has recently released its own human rights report. Indeed, what does the report say, and is it telling us the truth?
Hello, I'm Andrew Salmon and welcome to Bizline. Now, fall Korea's finest season is with us once again, and fine autumnal days make fine photographic backdrops for newlyweds and indeed for soon-to-be-weds. However, these days, if you visit the kind of scenic sites where Koreans like to take these nuptial photographs, you'll discover as many Chinese as Koreans. So, what is bringing Chinese couples to Korea for their big days? How much are they spending when they're here? And how big is the Chinese wedding market? Let's take a look.
A whopping 10 million couples in China tie the knot each year. As the country boasts the world's largest population of 1.3 billion people, the number of couples getting married each year is also quite large. But the concept of wedding industry has just begun to settle in China. As a result, soon-to-be married couples are turning their eyes to Korea's wedding services. The craze for Korean wedding services is rapidly spreading in the huge Chinese land. Cheongdam District in Seoul's Gangnam area is nicknamed as Korea's representative wedding town. The district is crowded with wedding-related businesses such as studios, dress shops, and jewelry shops. This good-looking couple and their faces filled with excitement is taking wedding photos. With flawless makeup and wedding attires, they are in the middle of a wedding rehearsal. What's surprising is that they are not Korean, but Chinese.
중국에서 오신 그 예비 신랑 신부님들 같은 경우에는 예식을 보통 한국에서 안 하시기 때문에 이제 여기서 촬영 그 당일날 그리고 드레스 고르는 거 거기까지만 진행이 되고 있어요. 그래서 먼저 오시면 드레스를 고르고 그 다음 날로 촬영 날짜를 잡고 아침에 이제 헤어나 그다음 메이크업까지 진행하고 여기 촬영까지 그렇게 제공되고 있습니다.
Those who come from China get the one-stop services from Korean wedding companies to prepare for their weddings. Charmed by the makeup and dresses seen on Korean TV dramas, they go to the shops Korean celebrities frequently use, visit studios and tour sites, enjoying taking wedding photos and sightseeing at the same time.
就是我想给他一个特别一点的婚纱照，然后我们在中国的时候看韩剧啊。他们一些综艺节目，然后都有介绍韩国的一些这些婚纱都是很漂亮，我觉得也想带他过来那个拍那么一组，觉得给我们以后也有个美好的回忆。
China's wedding market is explosively growing, with 10 million couples getting married each year. The only sons and only daughters born under China's one-child policy in the 1980s have grown up affluently after China's economic reform, and now they also want to have special wedding ceremonies. In the 1970s, 700 yuan or $113.8 US was sufficient for a Chinese couple to get married. But as people became more affluent, wedding costs have snowballed to as much as 50,000 yuan or $8,124 US in the 2000s. The wedding market is also soaring. The market, which was worth $48.7 billion US 3 years ago, is likely to expand up to $124 billion US this year. However, China's wedding industry is still in the beginning stages. There are only a few large-size or highly experienced wedding service companies and influential brands. As a result, Chinese client satisfaction are very low. Therefore, soon-to-be married Chinese couples are flocking to Korea for its wedding services despite the high cost of about 10 million won or about $9,489 including the cost of stay.
한국의 어떤 그런 이제 웨딩 촬영하는 기술, 이제 웨딩 촬영하기 위해서는 이제 드레스도 있어야 되고, 그다음에 이제 화장이나 헤어 메이크업도 있어야 되고, 그다음에 이제 또 포토의 어떤 기술이나 편집 기술도 있어야 되고, 그다음에 또 그런 것들이 진행되는 어떤 여러 가지 프로세스적인 측면에서도 굉장히 어떤 퀄리티가 좀 높다라고 이제 보여주는 거고요. 이제 그런 측면에서 이제 중국이나 동남아나 이제 이런 쪽에서 이제 그 한국의 웨딩을 부러워하고, 그다음에 이제 자국에서 경험하지 못한 한국의 높은 퀄리티의 웨딩을 직접 경험해보고 싶은 그런 수요들이 꾸준히 늘어나고 있는 걸로 늘어나고 있습니다.
iFamily is South Korea's largest wedding service company. It provides all the information and one-stop services for wedding preparations. As its capabilities have already been recognized by Korean couples, it is also competent enough to embrace Chinese couples. 300 Chinese couples used its services 2 years ago, and the number rose to 600 couples just last year. This year, it expects the number to exceed 1,000 couples.
웨딩 서비스라는 게 상품의 어떤 서비스가 결합돼서 그게 어떤 완성도 있게 전달돼야지만 그 서비스 품질이 이제 말 그대로 관리가 되는 그런 특성을 가지고 있는데 한국 말고 다른 곳에는 이런 어떠한 여러 가지의 상품 서비스를 이제 하나로 이렇게 어레인지 해가지고 서비스를 제공하는 그런 체계가 없습니다. 한국 같은 경우 이제 그거를 여러 상품들을 서비스로 연계해서 최종적으로 고객이 만족할 수 있는 그런 서비스로 제공하는 어떤 그런 게 한국의 가장 우수한 경쟁력이라고 볼 수 있고요.
Korea's wedding industry for Chinese couples is expected to grow infinitely, with about 6 million Chinese tourists forecasted to visit the country this year alone. Various industries are quickly joining in with marketing strategies to attract them as wedding and tourism clients.
이제 웨딩 쪽이 여행업계 또는 관광업계, 의류업계, 다양한 업계와 함께 콜라보레이션도 갖고 또 어떤 새로운 상품 개발도 하고 무엇보다 이제 어떤 서비스 품질을 관리함으로써 전반적인 완성도를 또 높이고 만족도를 높일 수 있는 그런 어떠한 다양한 프로모션 등도 필요할 거라 생각이 들고요. 또한 지금은 많은 어떤 한국의 웨딩 업체가 인바운딩 방식으로 중국 고객님께 서비스를 제공하고 있는데 앞으로는 이제 중국에 직접 나가서 제가 현지에서 이제 한국의 우수한 웨딩 서비스를 제공하는 그런 서비스 현지화도 같이 추진돼야 된다고 생각을 하고 있습니다.
The domestic wedding industry, which already offers world-class services, isn't only targeting Korean couples whose number has been falling. Now it is targeting the massive Chinese market and gearing up for another leap forward to a bigger global market.
이런 다양한 어떤 그런 웨딩 관광의 체험을 통해서 어떤 외국 관광객들이 계속 유입된다면 어떤 다른 주제를 통해서 들어오는 웨딩 관광객보다는 훨씬 더 부가가치가 높은 그런 비즈니스 모델로 확대될 것 같고요. 이런 것을 통해서 한국에 있는 웨딩 산업도 궁극적으로는 지금보다는 훨씬 더 산업이 발전하고 어떤 넓이가 넓어지지 않을까 이렇게 생각을 하고 있습니다.
A wedding ceremony is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. As more Chinese people are turning to Korea to have their special and meaningful events, Korean companies are busy moving to satisfy the needs of clients who are increasingly craving unconventional weddings. The Korean wedding industry is signaling an era of a new service industry.
For 6 days from September 20th, President Park Geun-hye was on a North American tour. During the Canadian leg of her tour, she signed a bilateral FTA, or free trade agreement, between Ottawa and Seoul. On the American leg, she made her debut on the UN stage in New York. But what was the outcome, particularly the economic outcome of all this diplomatic activity? Well, to answer this question, we have with us a research fellow from the elite Asan Institute for Policy Studies in Seoul. James Kim, thanks for joining us on Bizline.
Andy, pleasure.
Okay. Now, prior to her visit to the US, she visited Canada and officially signed the FTA with Canada. What economic impact can we sort of expect from this in the near, medium, and long terms?
Right. So in 2013, if you were to take a look at the total trade that Korea was engaging with Canada, it's about 10.7 billion. To put that into perspective, it's relatively small because our trade with South Korea's trade with China in that same year was over 220 billion.
China, of course, being the main trade partner.
Right, and U.S. being the next on the line, and that was over 100 billion. So in terms of, even though 10.7 billion sounds like a lot of money, relatively speaking, it's relatively small. So the impact is not going to be felt economy-wide as a whole, but most of the impact is going to be felt in different sectors.
Yeah. Now, which sectors will particularly benefit or perhaps lose from this?
Right. So the key sector, the main export sector, obviously automotive, about 31% automobile exports. Out of the about $7.3 billion in total export that Korea has had in 2013. The auto parts make up about 6%, so together that's about 37% of total exports. And then you add in consumer electronic goods, electronic parts, telecommunications, about roughly 20%. So the bread and butter of South Korean exports, automotive and electronic consumer products, would do well, right? We'll gain something from this. On the import side, about a little over $3 billion imported from Canada. Most of this is solid fuel. So coal makes up about 33%. And then you add in primary products like copper and aluminum. That's another, 15, 20%.
Gotcha.
And then you have some wood products possibly that may potentially be beneficial for South Korean industries if they're using wood and furnitures and so on. So these are areas that would benefit overall, and you would have some sizable impact. And then you can't...
But it's a give and take, isn't it? There will be some areas where perhaps Korea will get more of a negative impact.
Right, so in agriculture, obviously, right? So one of the big export items for Canada is beef and pork. There's going to be phasing out of tariff on those products. But in order to offset the losses coming from that on the agricultural sector in Korea, the Korean government has a trade adjustment assistance plan in place for about $2 billion. But when it comes time for ratification in the National Assembly, that figure can change depending on how the negotiation progresses, as you know, in any FTA. And we saw that in Chorus as well.
Are there additional synergies that will come from the Canadian FTA that will kind of synchronize or see with the existing Chorus FTA?
Right. So we'd have to see whether or not there's any benefits for Korea. Because much of the auto exports even, you could say half of that is through the production facilities in the United States. As you know, Canada already has a free trade agreement with the United States through NAFTA. So half of the automobiles that are being sold, for instance, Hyundai in 2013 sold about 127,000 cars in Canada.
From its US plants?
Total. That's total for 2013 for Hyundai alone. Half of that is coming from the U.S. plants. The other half is coming
from here.
Right. For Canada, it means lowering the price on these Korean exported goods and allowing the consumers to benefit and take advantage of the lower prices on these goods. But for the Korean industry, I'm not sure that this really changes anything. And we'd have to see how this plays out to see what impact it would have on other sectors. Because this, the supply chain, the global supply chain is a lot more complex.
Absolutely.
Than the way we might make it out.
Let's keep it simple. Now, Korea has the Chorus FTA with the United States, the world's largest economy. It's now got another FTA with Canada. So that's the North American market kind of sewn up. And I understand that Korea is ahead of its main manufacturing competitors, Taiwan, China, Japan, when it comes to FTAs with North America. How long, given there are major multilateral FTAs being negotiated, how long will Korea be able to keep the price advantages that the current FTAs grant it?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's an interesting question. Let's think about that question a bit, because it assumes that trade is a competitive zero-sum game, and that may not necessarily be the case. Just because you have a bigger share of the pie right now doesn't mean that that's going to be true in the future. And the pie size will stay the same. It might actually grow, and it might benefit everyone, whether they're late to the game or early to the game. You're just taking the advantage of the fact that you have early access.
Well, a price advantage, right?
Right.
Vis-a-vis your competitors due to the lack of tariffs.
Well, that's another thing on the price. Whether the market is really that market niche is that simply
sensitive to
competitive.
pricing. Yeah.
Right. That whether the quality of the products or how you market the product, that may also play a very important role in whether or not you succeed in that market. So price isn't the only factor that plays a role.
Sure, but it is a factor, is it not?
Putting all the other factors aside,
anyway,
right? If you keep it constant, if you hold everything else constant, all the phones in the world were all Samsung, then yes, the price does have an impact.
Yeah.
How long is that impact going to last? Well, it depends on what kind of free trade agreement these other countries are able to negotiate with the United States.
What are we looking at on the horizon? I mean, when do you think that, say, Japan might have an FTA with the North American market?
Well, they're currently negotiating, as you know, TPP.
Yeah.
Right. So we'd have to wait and see how that negotiation pans out. As you know, there are some key differences there on the agricultural issue and automobile. These are issues that I don't think is going to be an easy solution. And it doesn't help with the fact that the President of the United States does not have a trade promotion authority or so-called fast-track authority to be able to negotiate the deal, and then Congress would simply vote up or down on that trade agreement. So the U.S. position is very precarious at the moment. And we might have to wait till the midterm elections are over to see whether or not the President will have that authority. But
all this having been said, then, it sounds to me like right now, for the foreseeable future anyway, Korea does have, or will have, this price advantage in North America.
Well, if you could call the free trade agreement that, yeah,
Right.
exactly, right. But Canada is looking to expand its free trade agreements. They're still negotiating. Well, over the past 7 years or so, they've negotiated 9 free trade agreements already. They're currently negotiating with 30 other countries, and Japan's one of them.
Okay.
So how will this work out? It's anybody's guess. And it has to do with the quality of the agreements, and I think, and also, or the type of agreement that you will have, and how that compares with the kind of agreement that Korea has with Canada and the United States, which
and
is
how,
a very,
of course,
relatively
it's
speaking,
implemented. Yeah.
it's a pretty high quality agreement.
Sure. Let's turn to the US leg of President Park's trip. Now, there are various issues clouding the South Korean-US relationship at the moment. There's the implementation of the FTA, which I understand has hit a few road bumps. There's Seoul-Tokyo animosity, which does not please Washington. And there's also Seoul's perceived policy shift towards Beijing. So given all these issues, how healthy are Korean-American ties?
Okay, so I think the simple way to put it is it's as good as it's always been. And that's not saying much, to be fair. But if you take a look at the history of the relationship between the two countries, it's had its ups and downs in the past. What's nice about this trip, or what might be unexciting about this trip, is the fact that there isn't any reason for at least me to believe, or some of the pundits to believe, to be overly excited about prospects of this relationship becoming something better or something worse.
Okay. Now, but let's talk about her speech before the UN. She spoke at the Climate Summit and announced a contribution of US $100 million to the Green Climate Fund. Now, why has climate change become a major agenda item here in Korea? And in what ways is Korea kind of trying to pioneer this movement?
Right. So as you know, this meeting in New York was about climate change, and it's the UN trying to set the stage for the Lima negotiations that's going to occur later this year, related to the Universal Climate Agreement. Hopefully, the goal is to get this thing passed by next year in Paris, towards the end of next year. So the meeting was about climate change, so the president had to say something about this issue, right? Secondly, as you know, the climate fund is based in
Based
Songdo.
Off Incheon, correct?
Right, in Songdo. So that was largely the work of our predecessor. And that 100 million includes the 50 million that's already been committed.
Invested, yeah.
Right. So the president simply wants to send the right kinds of signals that South Korea and her administration in particular is going to see through that commitment. So it was a sort of a signaling in many ways. And finally, from a domestic energy standpoint, South Korea needs to do more on renewables. In relation to China or Japan, we lag far behind in terms of our commitment to renewable energy and investment in renewable energy. So for simple energy security reasons, I think that it was good in overall to just send the right kinds of signals. And as you know, about the recently the move to implement the cap and trade arrangement in Korea. This is another development. So there have been many developments that her predecessor has already started.
Right, and she's continuing. I mean, you talk about renewable energy, you talk about the an energy trading system, cap and trade, as you call it. Do you sense that Korea really is moving quite aggressively on these kind of movements, or is this, as you say, just a follow through from the MB administration?
There's a lot of debate on this issue,
yeah.
Some people are more critical that the level of cap and trade is not extensive enough.
Well, this is not implemented yet, is it? It's coming in early next year.
Right, exactly. So, but the movement is she's following the right steps and trying to get this thing through as much as she can. So it's an issue that, and some people have criticized the administration for not doing enough about this.
Okay, well, final comments. The outcome of this North American trip overall, what's your take?
So from a political standpoint, and this is domestic political standpoint, I don't think it was all that bad. Gallup just released a polling result last week showing the presidential approval rating has risen. It's been highest since the Seoul ferry disaster. So if anything, the foreign policy aspect of her tenure has been the saving grace for her. So in that sense, it's been good. From foreign policy standpoint, she hasn't really made any kind of mistakes here, and she's highly sought after by foreign dignitaries. So she's very charming. So that personal touch to her foreign diplomacy has been very positive overall.
So good for the national brand, but perhaps no significant economic outcomes, bar, as we'll soon find out, the Canadian FTA. Cool, that's been a pleasure having you on Bizline.
Thanks.
Thank you.
What will the weather be like today? Accurate weather information is essential for those who leave their houses every morning. The app of the week is a meteorological information service app, Weather Pong, that used infrastructure of wireless communications base stations for the first time in the country. When you start the app, you can check even the density of fine dusts, besides the hourly temperature of your location. Its biggest characteristics is that all the information is updated by the minute, in real time. You can select multiple regions you frequently visit and check the nationwide weather and air movement on a map. You can get accurate information on fickle weather conditions anytime and anywhere.
Now, Seoul's Olympic Bridge, Pyeongtaek's Sohae Grand Bridge and Incheon Bridge all have several things in common. 1, they get you from A to B. 2, they offer some great views. And 3, they're what is known in engineering terms as cable stay bridges. Now, cable stay bridges are both extensive and expensive, and clearly they need to be both safe and long-lasting. Now, on the latter front, Korean researchers have worked out a way to extend not the span, but the lifespan of cable stay bridges. Let's take a look and see how they've done it.
Bridges over streams, rivers, or bigger oceans are one of mankind's most valuable inventions for crossing over waters and building civilizations. A bridge today not only plays a traffic function, but is also an aesthetic landmark thanks to technological advances and creative designing. The latest technological breakthrough in bridge construction is the so-called super bridge, capable of lasting 2 centuries. The Pont de Normandie that runs over the Seine in Normandy in northern France, the Bosphorus Bridge that connects Europe and Asia, and Incheon Bridge nearby Seoul come under the same category. They are byproducts of cable-stayed bridge technology. A cable-stayed bridge typically has a single pair of towers or more from which cables run down to support the top and base of the bridge deck.
일반 교량은 대개 육지에 건설하지 않습니까? 그 경우에는 상판을 받치는 교각을 촘촘하게 세울 수가 있습니다. 근데 바다라든지 강을 지날 때는 이 교각을 많이 세울 수도 없고 또 그게 더 비쌉니다. 그래서 이것을 좀 멀찌감치 세우게 되는데 교각 사이 거리를 갖다가 대개 한 150m 내지 200m부터 한 1000m 정도 사이가 되면은 되게 사장교로 건설하게 됩니다.
Cable-stay technology has become a popular choice for bridges around the world because of their spacious and elegant sculpture-like architecture, coverage of long spans, and relatively low cost. The Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology has recently made a technological breakthrough by developing an economic method of building cable-stayed bridges that can last up to 200 years. The keystone to the so-called Super Bridge 200 is ultra-high performance concrete that can compensate for disadvantages of conventional concrete material.
현재 그 사장교든 현수교든 일반 교량 다 비슷한데 주로 쓰는 재료가 일반 콘크리트하고 그 다음에 강재입니다. 근데 콘크리트 같은 경우는 가격은 싼데 이게 좀 무겁습니다. 무게가 많이 나가고. 그리고 그 안에 철근이 들어가는데 철근이 부식돼 가지고 콘크리트 수명이 짧아지는 그런 단점이 있습니다. 또 하나 문제가 강재는 부식이 됩니다. 되기 때문에 한번 짓고 나면은 계속 그 페인팅을 해야 됩니다. 그래서 유지관리 측면에서 좀 이제 어려움이 있다.
Ultra-high performance concrete is dubbed as the most important new precast technology that can shape future engineering and industrial growth. The Korean Institute became the second in the world after France to commercialize the new precast technology with extraordinary strength and durability. Unlike common concrete that is primarily composed of sand and crushed stone, ultra-high performance concrete mixes steel or organic fiber reinforcements for higher compressive strength and resistance.
나노 사이즈의 재료를 사용을 하거나 시멘트와 모래 사이의 경계면에 존재하는 공극을 줄이기 위해서 필러제를 사용을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 콘크리트가 강도가 높아지면 이제 갑자기 파괴되는 성질인 치성 파괴가 발생을 하는데요. 이런 치성 파괴를 방지하고 더 나아가 철근 사용량을 줄이기 위해서 강섬유를 사용을 하고 있습니다.
The ultra-high performance concrete the Institute has developed is 5 times stronger than common concrete, and a piece the size of a 500 won coin can withhold 5 tons of weight. A bridge built with ultra-high performance concrete also proved its strength and resilience in tests with traffic weight loads.
일반 콘크리트 같은 경우에는 한 30년에서 50년 정도의 수명을 가지고 고강도 콘크리트 같은 경우에는 70년에서 100년 정도를 가집니다만은 우리가 개발한 초고성능 콘크리트는 200년 이상을 확보할 수 있는 것으로 분석되었습니다.
The Super Bridge 200, using the new concept material, sharply reduced the weight and width of the road deck, helping to bring down the construction costs. Instead of heavy rebar used in common concrete, the ultra-high performance concrete was mixed with lighter fiber reinforcements that reduced the width by 20 centimeters. Because the deck has become lighter with lesser weight and width, fewer cables are needed to sustain it, helping to reduce the overall building cost.
저희가 개발한 바닥판은 보시는 것처럼 아주 단면이 얇은 거를 밑에 리브가 지지하게 하는 그런 효율적인 구조로 만들어 가지고 굉장히 무게를 한 반 정도로 줄인 그런 바닥판이 되겠고요. 또 스포 콘크리트가 내구성이 우수하기 때문에 그만큼 그 수명도 늘어나는 그런 효과가 있게 되겠습니다.
The columns in cable-stayed bridges had to be built within a certain distance because of less strength and the weight of the concrete. The distance between column bases can be nearly double to 1,000 meters from the current world's longest cable-stayed example of 530 meters.
철근 콘크리트 바닥판을 저희가 개발한 바닥판으로 대체를 하게 되면은 무게가 반으로 줄어든다고 했었죠. 거기에 따라서 이제 사장교에서 가장 중요하고 비싼 부재인 케이블 물량이 한 20% 정도가 줄어들게 됩니다. 그러면 결과적으로 전체적으로 보시면 서해대교에서 바닥판을 저희가 개발한 제품으로만 바꾸더라도 전체 공사비가 한 10% 정도 줄어드는 그런 효과가 있게 됩니다.
Through an enormous amount of research work and efforts to find the optimal structural system for a cable-stayed bridge with ultra-high performance concrete, the institution arrived on a technological breakthrough of more than doubling a bridge life to 200 years. The Super Bridge 200 technology can save costs in bridge construction by 20%. That could bring down the cost of state pork barrel bridge projects by $200 million over the next 10 years. It could also generate exports of more than $4 billion in overseas orders.
이 슈퍼 콘크리트 기술은 지금 저희들이 80메가파스칼에서 180메가파스칼 사이를 가지고 새로운 그 재료와 그 다음에 구조물 활용 기술을 개발하는 것인데요. 80메가파스칼 밑은 그 미국이나 뭐 선진국에서 뭐 일본도 유럽에서 많이 해왔습니다. 180은 이제 저희도 확실한 기술을 갖고 있고, 근데 그 사이 영역이 실제로 별로 그 기술 기준도 별로 없고 신기술 개발도 별로 안 해왔습니다. 지금 이제 성공에 대한 확신은 갖고 있고요. 상당한 수준 개발이 됐는데 이걸 완성시키면 전 세계적으로 콘크리트 측면에서는 세계를 선도할 수 있는 그런 기술을 확보할 수 있을 것이라고 저는 확신하고 있습니다.
Over the next decade, the world bridge market is estimated to reach $150 billion and the cable-stayed form is likely to make up 90% of new bridges. And they could all be using Korea's signature technology.
Although we as humans can't hear all of them, we're actually surrounded by a wide spectrum of sound waves. And the technology which harnesses these waves is known as sonic communications. Now, Seoul City Hall has recently installed a time capsule using this very technology. How on earth can sound waves capture citizens' memories? Well, keep watching.
Sound that human ears cannot hear is being used to connect smart devices. Let's look into sonic communications that have come under the spotlight as a next-generation communications technology. The Seoul Citizens Hall, which is in the basement of Seoul City Hall, has a special time capsule that has recently been installed. This small pillar, which is 40 centimeters in diameter and 120 centimeters in height, is the time capsule. It looks different from the traditional time capsule that buries and seals data under the ground. This modern time capsule uses smartphones. First, you download the Seoul Time Capsule app and log onto it. The app activates when you enter the zone, which is within 2 meters from the time capsule pillar. After leaving a photo or a message in the time capsule zone and leave the place, the message or the photo will automatically be sealed. You can check the sealed message by re-entering the time capsule zone carrying your smartphone.
스마트 앱을 이용해서 지금 이 자리에서 저장한 메시지를 10년 뒤, 20년 뒤에도 다시 볼 수 있다면 되게 추억이 되고 좋을 것 같아요.
It seems to be similar to the cloud service that stores data in virtual space, but what is different about this is that you have to visit this place to open the message you had left. The reason the app only activates in this place is because this small pillar is connected to the smartphone using sound, or so-called sonic communications. This venture company has developed the sonic communications technology applied to the time capsule, and although it could also be connected to Bluetooth or near-field communications, there were problems such as rapid consumption of batteries.
사운드 태그는 어떤 특정 매장에서 보유하고 있는 스피커에서 음파를 발생시키고 있고, 소비자는 본인의 스마트폰에 있는 마이크를 통해서 그 정보를 수신하게 됩니다. 그리고 그 수신받은 정보를 이용하여 스마트폰에서 어떤 정보를 보여줄 수 있는 기능으로 보시면 되겠습니다.
Sonic communications is a method of communications using a speaker and a microphone equivalent to a person's mouth and ears. It is a platform that transmits data. Normally, people can hear sound frequencies of 20 to 20,000 hertz. This is called audible frequencies. Frequencies greater than the upper limit of the human hearing range is classified as ultrasound. If a sound frequency nears 20,000 hertz, this is almost inaudible to people, but is recognized by machines. Sonic communications uses such characteristics of machines.
블루투스 같은 경우에는 기본적으로 와이파이랑 동일하게 운영되고 있다 보시면 되고, 반경으로 조절이 되기 때문에 예를 들어서 이 방 하나를 타겟하기에는 굉장히 좀 어려운 부분이 있습니다. 반면에 음파 통신 같은 경우에는 음파가 전달되는 지역까지만 딱 정보를 제공하기 때문에, 예를 들어서 두 가지 매장이 붙어있는 매장이 이 기술을 적용하고자 했을 때, 블루투스의 경우에는 옆에 있는 매장에서 다른 매장의 정보를 받을 수 있는, 이런 오히려 소비자 경험에 해가 될 수 있는 가능성이 있고요. 사운드 같은 경우에는 A 매장에는 A 시그널, B 매장에는 B 시그널이 나오고 있기 때문에 그런 오류 가능성이 훨씬 적어진다는 장점이 있습니다.
Sonic communications has an infinite usability as it can be used in all the smartphone devices. When a TV drama shows a scene of an actor using a product, detailed information on that specific product appears on the viewer's smartphone. Unlike the conventional interactive TVs, viewers don't need to download an app or insert information. Without doing anything, viewers can see the product information through their shopping mall apps they normally use. Such an innovative T-commerce service also applied Sonic communications.
원래 가지고 계신 스마트폰에서 원래 가지고 계신 쇼핑 앱들에서 이제 관련 상품들을 TV에서 발견한 상품들을 제공해 준다는 그런 유저 인터페이스 측면에서 차별이 있습니다.
To connect a TV to a smartphone with sound waves, first we need to insert inaudible frequencies carrying the product information to the TV program. The smartphone recognizes what data the sound wave signal carries, then it curates the information or connects the shopping mall the user has downloaded and shows the product from TV.
통수신 방법을 디자인할 때부터 배터리 소모하는 거를 고려를 해서 디자인을 해서 저전력으로 소모를 하고요. 휴대폰이 활성화됐을 때 듣는 횟수를 가능하면 늘리려고 하거든요. 예를 들어서 저희가 3분에 한 번씩 만약에 신호가 있는지 확인을 한다고 치면 매 3분마다 한 번씩 하는데 이제 한 번 확인하고 1분이 지났어요. 그러면은 2분 뒤에 확인을 해야 되는데 사용자가 휴대폰을 쓰기 시작하면 다른 장비들이 다 이제 활성화되어 있는 상태이기 때문에 그때 대신 듣고 2분 뒤에 듣는 거를 취소를 하는 거죠. 이런 식으로 그 사용자가 핸드폰을 어떻게 사용하는 거에 맞춰서 이제 활성화되는 게 달라집니다.
This service, which applied Sonic communications, is in business tie-ups with terrestrial broadcasting stations, home shopping companies, and online shopping malls. Communications technology that connects smart devices is developing day by day, but there are also inconveniences such as limited compatibility stemming from inconsistency in manufacturers, software, and technological skills. As it can communicate with only a speaker and a microphone, Sonic communications can be applied broadly. As a result, it has come under the spotlight as a next-generation communications technology.
소리를 주고받는 이 스피커 마이크는 계속 이 발전을 해나갈 거고, 그러면 뒤에서 그거를 다른 용도로도 활용하는 게 음파 통신 기술이 되는 거고요. 그리고 그게 소프트웨어만으로 가능하다는 게 아주 큰 장점이라고 생각합니다.
개인의 공간을 방문했다는 것에 대한 인증, 오프라인 공간에서 어떤 행동 패턴을 보였는지에 대한 분석, 그리고 마지막으로는 사용자들이 어떤 매장에 들어가서 상품을 선택하고 구매하는 데 있어서 전 과정에 걸쳐 결제까지 이르는 모든 분야에 적용 가능할 것으로 생각합니다.
sonic communications technology with an easy and intuitive interface that is connected with just sound. It is drawing attention if it can become the future of the next generation wireless communications technology.
The most terrible aspect of the North Korean regime is its abuses of human rights, abuses which have been detailed in countless books, reports and testimonials. Now, in an apparent bid to contradict this massive information, Pyongyang has issued its own human rights report. But where does the truth lie? If we dissect Pyongyang's details case by case, one by one, we discover that they differ from reports issued by virtually all other sources.
In February, the UN Commission of Inquiry issued a report based on testimonies from more than 100 defectors, victims, witnesses, and experts on North Korea. North Korean human rights agenda was discussed in high-level talks in the recent UN General Assembly. North Korea's Central News Agency released the document to counter the UN account, which it claimed was a publication of groundless stories based on unreliable witnesses and betrayers paid by hostile forces like the US, Japan, and the EU in a political plot to sabotage the socialist system and defame the country.
기존에 북한이 이제 그 국제사회의 인권 문제에 대한 제기가 있을 때마다 사실상 좀 외면하거나 회피해온 측면이 강합니다. 적극적인 공세 자세는 아니었죠. 그런데 이번 이제 자체적인 어떤 보고서를 발간한 부분은 아주 적극적인 공세를 펼치겠다라는 태도로 이제 비춰지고요.
It's the Hermit Kingdom's first ever human rights report released by a body called North Korea's Association for Human Rights Studies. The 50,000-word manifesto is divided into 5 chapters to claim its people enjoys the world's most advantageous human rights based on North Korea's superior Juche ideology. But anyone who has had or heard of first-hand experiences in North Korea would give an account similar to the UN report.
It's really based on theory, assertion, and the laws on paper in the DPRK, and it's not based on actual investigation of human rights. So there's a lot of theory about the universality of human rights and these kind of things, but no kind of evidence or actual what's happening to the North Korean people.
According to Rights, the report claims North Korean citizens enjoy in Chapter 2, North Korea disallows illegal execution, torture, and imprisonment. But only last year, North Korea executed about 70 people. In December of last year, it announced the execution of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle by marriage, Chang Song-taek, after being publicly condemned and sentenced to death in a tribunal. What's undeniable, as satellite pictures clearly show, is the existence of political prison camps. There are about 6 prison and labor camps detaining people disloyal to the regime. International groups put the number at around 200,000.
물론 이 정치범 수용소 내에서 행해지는 각종 인권 유린에 대해서는 정확한 실태를 파악하기 좀 힘든 부분이 있습니다. 워낙 폐쇄적이고 고립돼 있기 때문에 다양한 이제 그 경험자들이나 또 그것을 관찰했던 사람들에 의해 가지고 지금 알려진 상황으로는 불법적인 어떤 고문이라든가 또 처형이라든가 뭐 강제 추방 뭐 다양한 형태의 어떤 인권 유린이 정치범 수용소에서 이루어지고 있는 것으로 나타나고 있습니다.
제가 아시는 분들 그 정치범 관리소에 갔다 왔는데 그 담장 자체도 한 2, 3m를 해놓고 꼭대기 전기선을 고압을 투어해서 한 30m, 40m 하나씩 자동보청을 걸어놨더래요. 그러니까 그 안에 사람들은 정말 거기를 탈출하는 사람들은 영웅이에요. 가다가 그냥 개죽음 당하고 정치범 관리소는 딱 무기를 짓는 거쳐 서는 사람들이 일을 안 하게 되면 무조건 때린대요. 근데 거기서 때려서 죽어도 그걸 누가 어디다 나가 신고할 때도 없고 항소도 못 하잖아요.
The notorious prison camps are not just for North Koreans. 3 Americans are being held there. Korean-American Christian missionary Kenneth Bae was sentenced to 15 years of hard labor, and 2 other men, Jeffrey Fowle and Matthew Todd Miller, are detained. the North Korean leaders are violating freedom and rights of foreign civilians by using them as bargaining chips in international negotiations.
So the situation of detained Americans in the country is actually very different to other human rights violations inside the country. Really, this is mostly aimed at a propaganda ploy by the North Korean government. They do have to treat the prisoners humanely to a certain degree, because eventually they are actually, we expect, planning to hand them back over to the Americans when they get a high enough level of visit from a special envoy. And that's really what they're going for with this whole play, is they're trying to win propaganda points from getting a high level visit from America.
Along with the rare publication and release of its human rights report, North Korea has been making an all-out defensive and publicity campaign on the diplomatic front, amid growing international pressure over its human rights questions. Veteran diplomat Kang Seok-ju traveled to Europe and met with Chief Human Rights Envoy of the European Union. For the first time in 15 years, North Korea sent a foreign minister to the recent 69th session of the UN General Assembly in New York. But the charm offensive was met with cold shoulders from the international community.
So they think that they have to make these arguments and, engage with other countries to try and break out of it. Fundamentally, though, it's probably a losing strategy, because it's all about talking and not actually improving their human rights. They understand that the bedrock actually of the system that exists in North Korea, the political system, depends on widespread and severe human rights just to be, relatively stable even in the short term. If they opened up, if they, for instance, allowed freedom of information, freedom of speech, and closed the political prison camps, then they have a very rational fear that their system would come crumbling down.
North Korea has turned assertive on human rights issues in vain. Efforts to turn favorable light toward the regime and dispel, quote, misunderstandings about its civilian treatment. The fact that it was using human rights issues as propaganda instrument only underscores how desperate the country is to protect its regime and at the same time reach out to the world to get sanctions eased.
And that's all we have time for on Bizline this week. But do join us again next week, because the movie Roaring Currents has turned the Korean box office upside down and inside out. 18 million Koreans, that's over 1/3 of the population, have watched the historical battle epic. And it's not just raging currents. This year the Korean movie industry has been rolling out hit after hit after hit. So we'll be looking at the who's, the what's, the why's, and of course the how muches that is behind this promising new revival of the Korean movie industry. So do join us then, but that's all for now. I'm Andrew Salmon. This was Bizline. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.